how did you get into? You were quite involved in the C5 Galaxy.
Yes.
Um, in the development of it, you were at this point you must have been more like an engineering test pilot, huh?
No.
You were
It was
still a
always
production.
in production. I never went to engineering. But in production, we had project offices for each type airplane. C-130, Jetstar, C-5, 141 had project offices. The project office was largely responsible for everything about that airplane with regard to production flying, not engineering type things.
Okay.
But I was C-5 project pilot, which meant I was the office manager of the C-5 office.
Okay.
And we organized and wrote up paperwork in how to accomplish all production flights, and we did all training for the C-5, for the Air Force people, for our own, and we wrote up and produced the training material for the Air Force. The basic plan was the Air Force had that Lockheed would, let me see how to say this, Lockheed would do the first training for Air Force people. But then, as soon as that training, or while that training is going on, we had to start preparing those people who got trained first in the Air Force to do the rest of the Air Force training. They didn't envision Lockheed doing training on down the road. We had to work our way out of that program, so we had to make little classroom simulators of hydraulic systems and electrical systems and make up the descriptions and the drawings for the handbook on describing all these things so that the Air Force instructors could take all this material and immediately teach a class.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that was, doesn't sound like so much, but that was a very big job and a difficult job that we did in flight operations.
Did you did you fly the C5 much?
Oh, yeah, I flew, until I left, I flew all the C5s.
Okay, so you got a lot of hours in those too, huh?
Yep. Didn't make 1,000, but I got a lot.
Yeah.
I forgot now, 900 and something hours, very close to 1,000. I can claim that as a 1,000-hour airplane.
Yeah.
Because I was, it was right up there. But Leo Sullivan was the chief engineering test pilot in the C-5 days, and he made the first flight on the C-5. He and Walt Hensley made the first flight on the number 1 C-5, and thereafter I flew on all the C-5s that came along till I left, which was, I believe, ship 72. I'm not sure of the number now. I've kind of forgotten that. In that first bunch of C-5s, they had scheduled to make 115, I think, but they ended up canceling the contract at 81. I believe 81 was the last one. They've ended up canceling to 82, but when they got to 81, they had stripped 82 for parts for the earlier airplanes, so it never was made. And so they only made those two, so I didn't fly those last few airplanes. And of course, since then, Lockheed got a new contract years later and has built more C-5s, C-5As, which I didn't have anything to do with. It was just an updated airplane.
Was it bigger engines or something?
Yeah, everything was bigger. The airplane was a little bit bigger, and the engines were definitely bigger. And they started leaving off things. One of the problems of the C-5 program was that it was such an enormous dollar value contract going through the Pentagon that everybody in the Pentagon who had nothing to do with that contract had their own little pet project. This guy over here, for instance, was a tire man, and he had some new kind of tires he wanted to test. So he put in his 2 bits, said, we want to put these new tires on this airplane. Here's a big contract, got a lot of money, we can afford to do anything we want, they'll never be noticed. So he puts his tires in. Guy with the radar, different kind of new development radar, he wants to get his stuff. He says, put it on the C-5 program. C-5 had all kind of things that were really non-essential to the program, and in fact were just detriments to time and effort to develop the airplane. But it went through with nearly all these to some degree, and made it, you might say, as an airplane. And it proved its value because of the world situation where it was the only airplane that would carry the big fuel trucks and the tanks in the airplane. At that time, and that was very important to the airlifts to the Middle East and so forth. But all these subsidiary things really weren't too necessary. For instance, the re- the kneeling gear, landing gear system that would kneel the trailing into the airplane, the ramp door at the back, the airplane could be knelt so that door was at truck height, normal transport truck height, so it load right onto it, and it kneel to the front too. And you could pull up any one gear. One of the good things about that system, it wasn't what they wanted for a loaded system, was never really seriously used, but they had it. That was part of the contract. And Lockheed had designed as part of that contract an on-board system, a little, in FedEx, they see these packages running down through they had roller tracks that could be installed in the airplane on a moment's notice and load that airplane with all this. They had a contract thing that a full load on a C-130, C-5 had to land at an airport and be able to unload, offload the whole load, and unload, onload another load, and be gone in 15 minutes.
Gee,
it was amazing. It had to work like a shotgun, bang, bang, bang. And all that was very expensive. They had to have parts of this assembly that go in the airplane and parts of the airplane like a truck that they'd pull up the outside and it all fit together and everything started rolling. And they had to fit this into the trucks, and you unload the airplane and just go zip into the trucks. And then the trucks move and the other truck is zip it all back in. And that never was utilized in any way, but it had to be a lot of design work and effort, cost to go into that sort of thing.
Now, there was, you were telling me once about how they were, I forget what kind of planes they were using, but they were trying to keep someplace stocked, and they were having trouble keeping up with the supplies. And the C-5 came in and...
the 141 had some year, I don't know the year now, but after it was in service, we had a world route going around the world, a constant train of 141s to all the Air Force supply depots at various points around the world. And the C-130, C-141 was handling that traffic, and I don't know how much backup they had, but they had some, and they would go around and another one come by, and they'd load it up, they'd carry all it could, and off it'd go. And when the C-5 came out and started fitting into that run with the C-141s, in very short order they had stripped all the supply depots empty, moved all the stuff, and there wasn't anything to do. So it just...
Because they could take, what, twice as much?
I don't remember, like 4 times as much as a C-141 or something like that, but enormous load. At the time, that was more than was needed, but it just blew the C-141 out of the system, so to speak. C-141, Lockheed, was not a very good airplane. It gets a lot of good write-ups. It had pretty good speed, but it was a very difficult airplane to fly, and had maintenance problems, all kind. It is not a... I know they built like 300 or something of them. I guess it was a moneymaker for Lockheed, but it was not a very good airplane.
The C-5, how long was it in production? It wasn't...
The C-5?
Yeah.
Well, the first one came out in '65, and I guess, I don't know, because I left in 70. No, 70. 71. I left in 71. See how easy to make a mistake, there's too many numbers for me. And they were not through. I think there were 9 or 10 airplanes to go at that time. So they had made 70 something at that time, I guess.
What was I going to ask you about the C-5? Oh, I know. How did it fly? And now I'm almost afraid to ask, because you'll tell me that if there was any plane that you'd like to have out of your hood rubber to go flying in, it would be the C-5.
No, I don't need a C-5. I don't need a C-5. Nothing about C-5 is anything. It's pure military, but it was a delightful airplane to fly. But you have to equate that a little bit with knowing how and being in a good place and having a long runway. It's a big, big airplane.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of trouble in the beginning teaching ourselves and teaching Air Force people to keep them running off the taxiways, because the front end where the pilot sat was 100 and something, I can't remember how many feet from the nose wheel to the first main wheel back there. And when you turn, if you turn here, the nose wheel, if you go to the taxiway and like the taxiway's here and you're going to turn in that, you turn the nose wheel in there, the back wheel cuts across the corner like a 18-wheel truck.
Mm-hmm.
And you just had to figure how far to go out here and then turn to keep those on there. And they had trouble, everybody running off the taxiways at first. So that's a big airplane fact. And of course, it flies easily and wonderfully, but being big and heavy, you couldn't hot rod it, I guess is the only expression I can think of quick. You didn't jerk it around the air. You had to plan ahead. You had to be a big airplane pilot. Fighter pilots and that sort of thing don't mix very well. But given that as an understanding, it's a big airplane where it was awfully easy and mighty nice to fly. But one of the things about big was, of course, this is true of many airliners today, is that I remember in the early flights, I'd stand in front of the C-5 cargo compartment when somebody else was flying and look back through the fuselage and see the whole, it's all empty here, nothing in it, the tail cone up here, and you see the whole airplane end to end twisting like this in turbulence. Yeah. And I understand, I've read somewhere that that's the reason they put the bulkheads like they do in the airlines today, so you can't see from end to end. You can't see that, which is probably
kind of scary for a passenger.
Yeah, people wouldn't like that too well. I don't think they could see that twisting. I remember talking about Delta and the Connie's constellations. First time I was flying on Connie's near that, flight engineer had a window and a side right here, and his desk was right here looking sideways. The pilot and co-pilot were here. The tail, triple tail Connie, way back here, and you look out through that door and you can see the outboard fin and rudder on this left side. That was the right side. On the right side. And when you ran the engines up, one engine at a time or any, you could see that whole tail just twisting, going up and down and doing like this. Just looked like it was a flag hanging on back there. Yeah. Didn't give you a lot of confidence. Of course, everything's flexible to a degree. The B-47, for instance, the first flight I had on it with my friend Lloyd, I was standing in the aisle down here with my head's about level with his lap, and I just barely see over the edge of the canopy and see out to the wing. And he said, "Watch that wing now." And he took the wheel and did it like this pretty fast. That whole wing had 3 waves in it between the fuselage and the tip. It would bend that much.
Wow.
And it's very fascinating to me in terms of structures and metals, because when it's sitting on the ground and you get out on that wing, that leading edge is solid metal. And I see them being built. It's made of a skin this way, then it has ribs. I guess they're welded on it somehow inside, like a hat section inside that skin. So it's very stiff. That leading edge had to be terribly stiff. And yet, when he would flex that wing like that, it would bend at those joints and the leading edge would kink there. You could see kinks this way in that leading edge. And I never could understand why those kinks would be there, nothing cracked, and just straighten right back out.
It's amazing. Amazing what's flexible. I was going to tell you when you were talking about being on the Yorktown, but I didn't want to interrupt, but a carrier is very flexible. All Navy ships have expansion plates in it.
Yeah,
the destroyer I was
plates.
on had 3 or 4. You could stand there watching them move around. But a guy from the Hornet told me one time that in a heavy weather, that if you were on the hangar deck in heavy weather, you couldn't see the floor of the hangar deck on the other end. The ship bent so much that you couldn't see a guy standing, like 6 feet up tall. You couldn't see him.
Slip this way. Yeah.
It bent like this and hit the guy who was at the other end.
I knew it had to flex like that a lot, but I've never seen that. Never thought of standing there and watching that. But that's not too good when you at sea. I hope it's waterproof. That, as far as I know, I'm probably the only pilot at Lockheed in my day. There's of course been a lot since then that were checked out. I was checked out in all the airplanes Lockheed had, and a few more at that time. I was just fortunate to be able to get into each program, or someplace like the Jetstar. Flew on the first 2-engine Jetstar and the prototype C-130s. I was very fortunate to be at the right place at the right time there.
But they were all cargo types? I mean,
Well,
commercial.
Most of the big airplanes were, but the airplanes were B-47, not cargo, C-130, which was 141, C-5 was a big airplane, and then the Jetstar was not a cargo airplane.
Yeah. Did you fly a B-52?
No, never saw a B-52 there.
Yeah.
And but I was the other airplanes I was thinking about. I was the only FAA pilot, I guess you'd call it. I don't know the name for it in the department, because every time Lockheed had a civil airplane application, I seemed to be assigned to it very quickly. Of course, all Lockheed pilots had to take turns on the executive airplane, which was an old Lodestar. I had to fly a year on that, and then when the Alaska 60 came along, that was a light plane almost, like a Cessna 180, just about. I flew
What was that? What was the number on that one again?
LASA, L-A-S-A, Lockheed Aircraft Service or something, I don't know. LASA 60.
60. And it was a kind of a bush plane, wasn't it?
Yeah, just about almost exactly a 180 with on steroids, they used to say. Just a tough 180, about the same size, but it had a flat cargo floor and a big cargo door on the back, and it flew just about like a 180. But
that never went anyplace, did it?
no, well, it went a little ways. They built a factory in Italy, and they built a few airplanes there. Not very many, I think. I seem to hear about 10 or 12 or something like that, and didn't quit. And they built a big factory for it in Mexico. No, not in Mexico. I was thinking South America, but it was Mexico. And started building them down there. I think they built several hundred there before they quit, but it didn't go very far. There just wasn't any demand for it, I guess, at the time. I think the airplane was built by Lockheed for some business organization that was behind Mexican or Italy or somebody. I think it was both of them, as a matter of fact, that paid Lockheed to design and build it. So it wasn't really a Lockheed airplane. They didn't want it. They just built it because they wanted it.
What's that again?
I flew Twin Beaches for Lockheed. They want something that Lodestar wasn't available, and I'd go down to Atlanta Airport and rent a Twin Beach and fly it, and rented a Beach D-50 one time and flew that. That was a pretty good airplane. And of course I flew the photographic missions for Lockheed in the Cessna 150s and one Cessna 172s, taking pictures of the plant and the surrounding around there just for the publicity department. And I flew the fence patrol for Lockheed's nuclear facility up in North Georgia, which was a pretty rough job. He had to take a map and fly the fence, and where there's a break in the fence, tree across or something, I had to mark it on the map. And now what I'd have to do by myself, I'd have to climb up, get smooth air, and take the map and try to mark the right place, go back down, fly the fence. And I tried many times to get somebody, Lockheed pilots and other people. One time I got a state patrol guy and claimed he could fly it. Take them ever, they'd all get sick. They was in real rough North Georgia mountains. It was up and downhill. I mean, to see the fence, you had to stay with the fence. They were up and down, and they just couldn't stand it. So I did all that. Eventually, I wouldn't even try to take anybody anymore. I'd just go by myself and take a little extra time and get it marked right. Take about an hour and a half to fly around that fence. Had a fence all the way around their nuclear plant up there. I flew over the plant one time and looked down, and it was on a river, a little river that was up there. And of course, that's why I had it there, because they needed water for cooling in there, I'm sure. And there was kind of a slope ground down to the river from the plant building, and looked down there. It was probably about 200 or 300 feet, maybe 100 yards down there. And from the river up to that plant, there were nothing but frogs, millions of frogs. It looked like, I don't know how many were there all, and they were all at the edge of the river, and they were all pointed, sitting perfectly still right up to that plant, not moving. So I didn't hang around there very long. I don't know what bothered them, but I didn't want to be there very much longer after that.